And 912 was Ashley Nutt from the high school.
Okay, so we'll have to squeeze in. I've got to say, this is the best attended Teacher of the Year recognition since I've been here. So we've not had to create a picture this big. Can we get everybody in, or do we need to form a double row? Yeah, there we go. Turn just a little bit, and that'll squeeze in some. That'll allow some of those to be turned in.
Get in there, Carmen. Good to see y'all.
We got the Rockettes now. One high kick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to take the angle right over there, or whatever will give you the best shot there, Miss Cole, and
Did you hear me?
as long as we have
The Rockettes.
1, 2, 3. I'm gonna take another one. 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you all.
Congratulations.
Come by and see you sometime.
Thank y'all very much. It's wonderful that so many of you came, and so we
Give them a
appreciate it.
standing ovation, we may.
That's fine. Thank you. And you are welcome to stay for this exciting meeting, but if you find something more interesting, you're also welcome to leave.
Please do not break the glass going out the door.
No, you're locked in.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got one more recognition, Dr. Nestor.
Yes, the tenure for Toby Alonso.
That is correct. So we, let's see, where is that? We had your certificate right up there, but it's not up there anymore. I looked at it before the meeting, and I know it was up here this afternoon. There we go. Okay, that's what I was a little concerned about.
So Sam never walked out the door.
There we go.
On second thought.
Came that close to not passing.
Yeah.
That close.
So let me bring this back up to height. Now, most tenured teachers were recognized several months ago, but Mr. Alonso is a CTE teacher, and the state, for whatever reason, was delayed in getting us back the last bit of data that would allow us to recognize him for tenure. When it came in, then he became officially tenured at that point, but that was because of his status as a CTE teacher that prevented us from doing that along with everybody else. So we wanted to make sure that we recognized that Mr. Toby Alonso is tenured teacher in Coffee County Schools. And of course, if people want to stick around for the rest of the meeting, they're more than welcome, but we recognize that families and comes up on dinner time quick, so if you want to leave us.
And get a photo?
There we go. Enjoy.
Did you get a
Did you get a
photo
photo?
of him?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and family.
sorry, Mr. Alonso. I'm glad you reminded me because Ms. West.
Ms. Jones on that one.
About that. No, that's fine. We just.
Congrats, Toby. Here, we gotta stand up for you too.
Congratulations.
We love you, Toby.
Good job. All right, this time we'll call the meeting to order. We did not have anyone sign up for public comment today.
It's crickety now.
And at this time, if there are no objections, I would like to open the floor for a motion to accept the agenda items, and also at the same time, the general consent items will be passed.
So moved.
Mr. Cordell and Mr. Parsley. Okay, are there any questions on the agenda or the general consent? If not, we are voting to accept the agenda and pass the general consent items. Mr. Parsley.
Aye.
Come this way, Miss
Aye.
Jennifer.
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. That passes 9-0. So our agenda is set. And we have 3 action items. Action item number 1, the compensation committee recommendations. Dr. Lawson, you want to speak on
Yes,
this?
sir. When we had the compensation committee meeting, we had 3 items that we discussed. 2 of them are on tonight's agenda, and 1 of them will be on the agenda for the spring retreat here in a week and a half. One of these was the education assistant, so we're going to cover that one first. There, at the March meeting, the board approved an extra $1 per hour for educational assistance in certain environments, including behavior mod, CDC, special ed pre-K, those kind of environments that represented certain challenges unique to those environments in an educational field. Now, at the conclusion of that, or I believe in the items for discussion, Mr. Ballard requested that the compensation committee revisit that topic and evaluate whether that needed to be expanded. So the compensation committee did meet. That was one of the topics that we discussed. And I'll give a brief overview since I'm describing the topic right now. The extra $1 an hour in those environments is an incentive to get applicants to apply for those positions because they are particularly hard to fill as far as our educational assistant roles. It's also because currently Franklin County and Manchester City pay an extra $1 per hour in those same environments. And so we're just responding to market pressure, so to speak. And what I've done, I've asked our pre-K supervisor, Ms. Sizemore, to be present tonight, and Mr. Westmoreland, our SPED supervisor. Mr. Westmoreland, Ms. Sizemore was at a conference whenever we were having the compensation committee, but Mr. Westmoreland spoke to the compensation committee, and so he was able to describe some of the unique challenges and why, and the thought process that went into making that $1 an hour for those challenging environments. So I've just asked them to speak for a few minutes. They were going to arrange is that?
Charlie, I'm gonna jump in.
Go ahead, Mr. Westmoreland. You want to use that microphone or the front one? Either one. Okay.
Okay, based on this decision to add $1 per hour for these settings, it was all based on the unique needs of these individual students in these settings. We have students on a day-to-day basis who need potty training. We have teachers and assistants who are dealing with students on a day-to-day basis that are aggressive, who can act out in what we would think of on a typical day as inappropriate ways, but for some of these teachers in these settings and these EAs especially, it's an everyday occurrence. It happens day in, day out, period by period. So asking to receive $1 an hour for these assistants is primarily so we can be competitive with other districts when it comes to being able to fill these positions. Some of these positions will come open and they will stay open. And then we have to fill them with substitutes. There's been a few times this year I've actually filled those positions. And you know, changing diapers in the pre-K setting, potty training your own kid is one thing, but potty training, I think there's 14 actively potty training students at Hillsborough presently. Potty training 14 children is a job. And these educational assistants are right there at ground zero dealing with that daily on a day-to-day basis. So that's primarily why we're asking for this adjustment. Any questions?
Thank you. Let's
Well,
let,
we
let,
can't-
we'll let,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
we'll get a motion
Item
and
for
then
discussion.
we'll open questions up a little bit, so but you come on up and speak, and then we'll have our interact.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. You stay here.
Well, I'll let you have front and center.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to what he was saying. Fortunately, my pre-K assistant positions are not hard to fill. While they may sometimes encounter some of those potty training issues, it's not year to year, day to day that they're dealing with those specific issues. Do I feel like that they deserve extra money for what they do? Absolutely. But the purpose of this extra pay was those hard to staff positions. And that's not really what we're facing at this time in my pre-K spaces. Those are not hard to staff positions at this time. I think that Charlie, like those 14 that are potty training at Hillsborough are in that SPED setting. We asked the teachers to share with us if any of the other pre-K teachers within our building are actively doing those potty training things, and we currently have none in our regular voluntary pre-K class that are having to do those potty training things. So.
And then I'll just conclude, and we can leave it here. But as far as this, I do want to emphasize, I believe that our employees should get as much pay as possible. That's why the growth in our pay scales over the last few years has been, well, faster than any other period of time in Coffee County Schools history. We're really pushing that, but this is a unique circumstance. We feel like this is a market pressure that we want to respond to specifically, and that's why we proposed it the way we did at the March board meeting. So for this, basically, I just wanted to emphasize, I did ask the compensation committee this question. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I felt like it needed to be on here because it was requested, but I do not recommend expanding this to all educational assistants. The supervisor of pre-K and the supervisor of SPED do not recommend increasing it to all assistants, and the compensation committee does not recommend it. But it's still here because it was requested, and I feel like it's an agenda item that we needed to include. But, and so at this point, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Nestor. If there's a motion made in a second, you can ask any questions you want to. If there's not a motion made, then we move on to the next item.
That is correct. As he said, the compensation, this is the compensation committee met, and the first item was the educational assistance. And so I don't necessarily have a motion, but if there's one that wants to be given.
Is there, which one of the three, the 210, 210A or 210B that, or are those different amendments
We're
to
talking,
cover this?
that's item number 2. That is not this particular item.
It's just the
Are you talking about the 10,
educational assistant.
10A, and 10B there in item 2? That's not what, those are on the TISA outcome funding. This is a different item.
So at this time, I'll open the floor up for a motion, if anyone wishes to make one. If not, we're going to item B, school nurses. Dr. Lawson.
Okay? And
I
so,
don't- I don't think we understood exactly what,
Yeah.
because what are you wanting a motion for, just to give $1 an hour, or?
No.
to expand the dollar
To
an hour
expand it to
that we
all the
voted on in
assistants in
March.
the system.
To
Mr.
all
Ballard had
educational
asked
assistants.
about expanding it.
Okay,
So, and so then Dr. Lawson has met his folks. We did have a compensation committee meeting the other day, and we did not,
and all recommendations pointed towards.
Do not
Not
expand.
to everyone, do not expand it.
that is correct,
Okay.
because it was a hard-to-staff position. So, but the board can make any motion if they wanted to change it, or without one, we move on. Okay?
Are we allowed to discuss, because I'm still kind of confused. Is it okay?
Well, ask a question, and
Okay,
if
so
you
what-
don't understand, you need to understand before we move
Right,
on.
right. So you're saying that as of right now, we agree that there's going to be $1 additional for the educational assistants.
For the,
It's already in place.
it's already in place.
Okay, so what we
We
would
were
have
asked if
to,
we could expand that to everybody in
everybody,
the
and that
system.
was not the recommendation.
That is
Okay,
correct.
all
Yes,
right, I
ma'am.
understand.
That's correct.
Yes, the existing dollar per hour for those hard-to-staff positions that the supervisors described, that was already passed at the March board meeting. Okay.
Thank y'all. We're going to action item 1B, school nurses.
Okay, this was another item discussed in the compensation committee. Now, there was one key piece of information missing at that committee meeting. And let me give a little background on this. At the March meeting, the board voted to award CTE teachers for all of their work experience on the teacher pay scale when they came in. Previous to that, they had been granted only 5 years. So that was passed and was dealt with. One group that sheer oversight, the question came up, it was given to a board member who sent it on to me, and it became a compensation committee topic, was about nurses. Now, nurses are paid on the teacher pay scale. It is a you have to be certified to be a nurse, therefore you are on the teacher pay scale. Historically in Coffee County, and current practice is to give them up to 5 years of experience. So if you're a nurse with 5 years experience or a nurse with 20 years experience, you start on step 5 on the teacher pay scale. Now, I can't speak on why that started, but looking at comparing us to other districts and that kind of thing, my guess is that some districts do it on the teacher pay scale, some do it on a nurse's pay scale, which is usually lower. And so my guess is since they did a teacher pay scale, they didn't give the full experience. But currently we give 5 years. With the move for the CTE teachers, nurses are the only certified group in the district now that is, their experience is limited. So when I was asked at the compensation committee meeting how much it would cost, my answer had to be, we are not sure at this point. I did not want to talk to nurses or have Ms. Garner talk to the nurses to get that information and then, have them discuss it and get their hopes up and that kind of thing. And then we have the compensation committee meeting and nobody wanted to do it. Compensation committee told me they wanted me to move forward with that investigation. And so the total cost, now understand, are younger nurses who have less experience. Some of them are actually at their full experience if they had less than 5 when they started with us. Some are not. And so what we did was we looked at that. We looked at, Ms. Garner checked with her nurses how much experience they had. We calculated it up. If all of them moved to the level of experience that they are due, if the board elects to do so, would be a total of about $21,400. And so there are some younger teachers that would not get any more experience on the, I'm sorry, what did I say? Teachers. Sorry. There are some younger nurses who would not get any more experience and some of our older nurses who will. And so that's where we are, the total cost. And so when I was asked as a recommendation in the compensation committee, I felt like I couldn't give a solid recommendation because I didn't know the cost. But I will say now I recommend that nurses receive their full experience, their full working experience as progress towards the teacher pay scale when hired on. And if the board elects to do that, we will build it into the budget to award that experience to our nurses, just like we will our existing CTE teachers in the next school year. And that's where the cost comes in, is we would, to give that missing experience to our nurses next year would cost about $21,400. So that is my recommendation.
So you heard the director's recommendation for the compensation of the school nurses to allow for their full working experience, starting on the pay scale. Is that correct?
Working experience as a nurse.
As a nurse, correct, sorry.
Yes.
As a nurse.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I'll second that.
Parsley, Mr. Cordell. All right, are there questions about this? Or
I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, when you're talking about school nurses, are you talking about nurses that are registered nurses with a 4-year degree?
Yes, ma'am. We're talking about registered nurses. Both associates and bachelors are on the same. If they're a registered nurse, they're on the certified pay scale. I'm sorry, LPNs, we do have, I believe, two. We have 2 LPNs in the district, and they are on a classified hourly scale. Now, if you recall, one thing I did not realize, LPNs, since they're on the classified scale, this board approved last spring to give classified people their full experience. Well, the LPNs then got their full experience on their pay scale while the RNs are not getting their full experience on their pay scale, because one's on the certified pay scale, one's on the classified. And again, that is it. But so we are distinguishing between RNs and LPNs by where they are or which pay scale they're placed on.
So RNs are on the same pay scale as a teacher.
That is correct.
Okay.
Currently, yes, ma'am. I could
But-
not, do you know when that started, Ms. Garner? It predates both of us.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly when it happened.
And in the past, they weren't getting their previous experience.
They were getting up to 5 years.
Okay.
So if they had 5 years or less, they got their full experience, and if they had more than that, they only got 5.
And there were several school districts that paid them on the teacher salary, the
There
teacher
were,
pay scale,
yes,
correct?
there were several districts that paid them
Yeah.
on the teacher pay scale. There were 8 districts that Ms. Garner looked at. 4 of them were on a nurse's scale, 4 of them were on the teacher scale. And then some of them gave experience for school nurse only. Some of them gave experience for pediatric only. Franklin County, for example, gave them all their experience. And so there is a wide variety of ways that nurses are compensated in school districts in this area. It just makes it very difficult to come up with a solid comparison and say most schools are this, because I don't know that any school district did it exactly the same as the other. Ms. Garner? Ms. Garner did most of the research. That's why I'm making sure that I check with her on accuracy.
Thank you. I just, when you said school nurses were on the teacher's pay scale, I knew there was a differentiation of the nurses.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any more questions, concerns? If not, we will vote to approve action item 1B, the school nurses rewarding their full working experience as a nurse. Let's see, Miss Jennifer, you get first vote.
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. That passes 9-0. Action item number 2, TISA outcome funding budget amendment 141 to 2024 10, 10A or 10B. Dr. Lawson.
Yes, at the work session in February, I brought this topic up. The TISA outcome funding is funding that the district was rewarded through the TISA funding model based upon test performance in the spring of '23. And so I believe the amount was somewhere around between $385,000 and $386,000. And I talked about several possibilities at that point. Now, in the conversations with Ms. Melson since then, some of these options include extra pay for employees in the June paycheck, if approved by the board. Now, the reason we're bringing this up in this way is if we're going to move forward with one of those, it has to be done in a timely fashion, because whatever budget amendment passes here, if any, has to pass through the county commission and then has to be processed into paychecks before the June paycheck run. And that is coming faster than some people realize. When we get into the end of a school year, it moves very, very quickly. So what I did was I sent the board an email, and I sent that to look at the different options. I believe the date on that was March 22nd. And I described 3 different options that would be on this board meeting. Now, the board does not have to adopt any of these options. This can be left alone. We can try to come up with other options later that maybe don't include the employee compensation piece, because there won't be as much time pressure. We can also the board can also choose to take no action, and the money will become part of fund balance, just like it would any other year or any other award of money. And also, when I'm done talking, I'm going to make sure with Ms. Melson that I have not left anything out. Now, in the email I sent to you, there was option 1, 2, and 3. Please keep in mind, and I said in the email that I will be recommending option 2. Option 2. Please keep in mind, if you want to make a note on your paper or whatever, option 2 is the budget amendment ending with -10. That is the one that increases the employee extra pay by $250. Giving each employee in June a total of $1,000, adding to it the extra pay that's already been approved. And then each school would get a different allotment of money as described in that email, based upon the needs of different levels of school and also enrollment. So that is option 2, and that's broken out in that budget amendment. But I went with that one because that's the one that I'm going to recommend is number 10. Option 1, which was dividing the money between all the schools on those same percentages as you see posted in the budget amendment. Option 1 is 10A, that is schools only. Option 3 is 10B, and that is employees only. How much was that? If it employees only in option 3, which one?
450.
450. And that, okay, yes, that is correct, 450. So basically, if a board member wants to make a motion, they can make a motion to adopt budget amendment ending number 10, ending number 10A, or ending number 10B, or no motion at all, and then none of them even develop. So that's kind of where we are. But my recommendation is to adopt budget amendment number 10, the one with a split between employees and the schools.
Can I add?
Go ahead, Ms. Nelson. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you adopt amendment, sorry, I'm losing my voice, an amendment that contains a school contribution, I'm going to need the motion to make sure that money can roll over from school year to school year. Because if we do not do that in the motion, the schools have to return that money each year to us, and that has to be reapproved for it to go back out. So if the amendment you want to pass, or the amendment that's on the floor, needs to have the motion in it to allow the schools to roll over the funds from year to year until the funds are gone.
Okay, so it would be the TISA outcome funding budget amendment, allowing the funds to roll over, if not.
That would be 10 or 10A.
10 or
If 10
10A.
or 10A is the one, please include motion language that allows the schools to roll the money over. Because what will happen is, that's not the normal thing that's done. We've never done anything quite like this. And so the auditor, if the auditor asks, we can say yes, this, and we can point to the minutes in which that motion was made. Is that correct?
That's correct, and the auditor will make us return those funds if I can't show proof in a board meeting that you guys allowed that to roll over.
Okay.
So it is an allowable thing, but only allowable by board motion.
Okay. So you've heard the director's recommendation, and so at this time I'll open up the floor for a motion if anyone would choose to make one.
I will move that we accept TISA Outcome Funding Budget Amendment 10, which would be a split between employees and the school, with the provision that the school money could be rolled over to the next fiscal year.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we've had a motion by Ms. Rose and a second by Mr. Cordell. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay.
Any questions from
Now,
Ms.
we'll
Nelson?
field questions, or whoever would like to go first.
Who all gets a raise with that?
Uh,
Or
this
not a
would-
raise, but
The extra, what we call extra pay, and that, we call it extra pay in here because a bonus is taxed at a different rate than compensation, and so by calling it extra pay, it's taxed at the same rate as a regular pay. Basically, it would be $250 for all regular employees, and it would be done in the same way as we've been doing the extra pay now for several years. If you recall, back in the fall, the board approved to do an extra pay that was $750 distributed in December and $750 distributed in June. That $750 is still waiting in June. What would happen is this $250 would roll into
Add to
that,
that.
and so a regular employee, for example, would receive a full $1,000 in June instead of just the $750. So it would be, all employees would be eligible.
Okay, I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're saying that it can roll over, so my thinking is that that's okay, but my thinking is too, that the people that are going to be over this money at each school need to realize that this is not a savings account, that these teachers and these employees, you know, we've got TISA funding, and it doesn't need to keep rolling over and not be utilized for those children and those teachers that are in place right now.
Yes, ma'am. And that, I will make sure, we have a principals meeting Wednesday, and I'll make sure to point that out. We have discussed that with them a little bit, but we weren't sure what was coming. But the purpose of allowing it to roll over is if a school receives a certain allotment and they know they have a fundraiser in the fall and allows them to step up to something else that they want, they can carry it over and combine it. But no, you are correct. The purpose is not to roll it over year over year over year. It's just it would be a short-term thing, allowing them to combine it with other funds and make basically a better judgment call on when they wanted to expend it. And also, I'll say this, if they receive it, it's April 8th, they may not be able to make the decision very quickly on what they want to try to purchase before summer. And our books have to close on June 30th.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
would the motion maker possibly, if we done a friendly amendment to cut that rollover to 1 year? Because I think with the timing when outcome funding is going to come out, it would be good to have that in there every year, to at least have one rollover. Allow it, and
The board can choose, I mean, and
I'd basically give a year to
it
figure out
could,
where you're gonna put it.
And
I don't see a problem with it.
Would that be
That would
the-
limit, I mean, it
keep
would
it
make
from
them
rolling
spend it
over
within a
to
year
to
and
year.
a few
And
months.
It's an urgency,
If that's what we think,
urgency to get the money
And
spent.
I guess if that was to be done, I would request that it be not just 1 year, because that might be, somebody look at that and go April 8th. I would say by the
Yeah.
close of the next fiscal year. That way, if this board is facing a decision on outcome funding next year, it's quite possible that they could do something and combine the two pots. So if we just
or
said.
we can't do it.
Or we can't.
Yeah.
And so if you go that direction on an amendment, I would encourage the language to be by the end of the following fiscal year instead of 1 year.
Well, and they don't need to hold it thinking there's going to be something else. There may not be
There
anything
may-
else there next year.
That's right. We do not know the outcome funding allocation from year to year.
Correct.
It could vary significantly. We just don't know. This is the first year it's existed.
So we want that amendment to, want to make that addition, that money can be rolled over through the 25-26 fiscal year.
Through
that right?
the end of the 24-25 fiscal year.
A year from right.
Basically June the 30th,
30th.
2025.
This year's TISA allotment, the amendment would be that this year's TISA allotment would need to be expended by the close of the 24-25 fiscal year.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought
Basically a
that was
year and
what
a
we were
half.
already doing with it. Okay. All right.
No, they could roll it
Well-
over to next year,
To the
but they
next
just
year.
couldn't
I
roll the
see.
next year and the
You're
next year.
limiting it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So-
it's
Technically,
purposely
as soon as the
limiting.
board passes this and the commission passes this, if there was an item a school district had been keeping an eye on for a while, as long as they can get in the purchase orders and that kind of thing before the close of the fiscal year, they might be able to install something this year. That would be
But
difficult.
it might be a little tough.
That would be difficult. But,
That's what I said in the motion, that it could be rolled over to the following fiscal
Yes.
year.
It can, but you can't roll it to another year.
but they're
You wanna
stipulating
make sure
expend
didn't
it
go
by the
past
end of that
within-
fiscal year.
25. Okay,
April, May, June, within 15 months.
15 months, okay.
Yeah, basically.
Dr. Cornelius might give us an idea of if this is going to be possible to get this much in the future.
Like Dr. Lawson said, it would be completely dependent upon student performance on those, on the different tests. Elementary has third grade and fourth grade ELA performance, and the middle school has eighth grade math and ELA, and then seventh grade, if they improve, that's another bonus, and then high school has several metrics that will meet it, but 21 of ACT plus 2 post-secondary credits earned, they can have 3 post-secondary credits earned, or they can have the ASVAB of 31 or higher and have 2 post-secondary credits earned. So it varies from group to group. And again, it's completely dependent upon student performance, the achievement, and then it's also dependent upon the improving from the previous year, if they improve or not.
Now, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair,
We haven't made the motion. She hasn't changed it yet.
okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Was the friendly
So I was
amendment
about to ask her if
accepted
she
or not?
wants
Okay.
to, if that's acceptable.
Okay, so all I have to do is just change it.
You just accept the friendly amendment as stated.
I will accept the friendly amendment as stated. I like that, thank you. Mhm.
And Mr. Cordell, are you okay with
Aye.
that? Okay.
And I do want it, making sure that everybody understands that language is that the money will be expended. The money from this TISA outcome allowance will be expended by the close of the fiscal year 2024, 2025.
Right.
Right. I think that's the way we understand it.
And just to refresh, you said you all have went over things maybe to spend the money on and things like that, things that are needed.
We have talked briefly at the last principals meeting in March about potential, maybe it was February, but potential
Items.
cost and items. But obviously, the needs of our schools are varied. So one school, an elementary school, may choose to put something on their playground, and the high school might use it for their Renaissance honors recognition. We're just trying to give the schools the freedom to apply it where their needs are to best reward these students.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? I think everybody's pretty clear. We are voting to accept action item number 2 as was stated. Ms. Jones, you're first.
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. That passes 9-0. Action item number 3, the budget update. Ms. Melson?
This is a budget update through February. Revenues are at 73.75% compared to last year to date at 74.01%. And then expenditures are at 54.03% compared to last year to date at 56.34%. Really, there's no change in the budget report since last month. This is through February, but if you have questions about certain lines, I'll be glad to take those questions.
Dr. Lawson, this update comes with your recommendation.
It does.
Like to open the floor for a motion to approve the budget update.
So moved.
Second.
Was that you, Mr. Parsley? All right. Questions for Ms. Melson?
I always have questions. it
That's
seems
good.
like. Sorry. No, it's not questions, it's more or less clarifications because I always notice what percent is received and what, we had received last year, and it shows that under federal government revenues, that this year we've received 33.24%. And last year at this time, we had received 64.79%, and I just wondered what the difference was there.
So that's reimbursement for our ROTC instructors, and we had one leave, I think, at the end of last school year, and so we only are getting. And when I budgeted to get reimbursement for 2, and this school year we've only had 1 ROTC instructor. So the federal government reimburses us for half of their salary. So this is for just 1 person, and the budget was for 2 to get reimbursement from the government for the ROTC instructors.
So we only have 1 ROTC instructor.
We have
before
1
we
as
had
of
2,
now, and then we'll have 2 in the next school year.
But we only had 1 this year.
That's correct.
What was the reasoning for that?
I just
Didn't have enough children,
I can speak.
students?
I can speak a little bit to that. That happened early at the very beginning of the school year. The instructor that had to leave had a family emergency, and he had to move back to his home in Mississippi, and so he had to resign his position. The position has remained open for the entire year. I guess Mr. Parsley can probably, or Mr. Paul Parsley can give a better idea on the timeline there if you want to speak to that.
It has been open for the year up until, well, and it's still open currently, but good news is about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were able to make a hire for next school year. And so we have a colonel coming in for next school year. We'll be moving to the area and expect him to be here early summer. So there are literally hundreds of AFJ ROTC instructor positions across the country that are vacant currently. We had the position, one of the positions open 3 or 4 years ago, and it was vacant for a little while then as well. I feel like we've really been fortunate. When I talked to some other areas where they have vacancies, they've remained open for multiple years, and unfortunately what ends up happening there is programs get closed for lack of an instructor or lack of interest in the program. Again, fortunately, we have somewhere around 120 students in our program currently. It continues to thrive, although we have just the one instructor right now. He's doing a fabulous job, and every time I get a chance, I give him recognition because he's got a hard job right now. He's doing, you might say, the work of two.
And I will say that Colonel Herschel, who is the gentleman that had to leave at the beginning of this year, when there has been a large event such as their ball and in certain things, he has traveled up here from Mississippi to assist with that preparation, because it is simply too large of a, when there's special events, it's too large of a job for one person, and Colonel Herschel has graciously traveled that distance to try to assist because we only have one instructor. And I will emphasize, even though it shows a lack of revenues in that line, since that teacher doesn't exist, we have not gotten the money from the federal government, but we have not had to expend that money either. So we're not, in the big scheme of things, we're not really losing that revenue because we're not turning around and paying it to somebody either, because that person has not existed this year.
Okay, thank you. That's very enlightening. The other line was health services, under percent used. We've used 18.33% as compared to 53.42% last year.
So that is where we're paying for the guidance counselors from the ESSER 3 grant. That was for the whole school year. So those counselors were paid out of the general school last year, and this year they're being funded by ESSER 3.
So we supplanted for guidance, and then next year we'll have to pay for all of them. Is that correct?
Well, they usually are always in the general school budget, but this year they were, when we looked at funds and alignment of those, that was one of the choices that was made. In order to use those funds, we would pay for guidance out of ESSER 3.
And save that money. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we have, and that is, a large chunk of that is what paid for the window film on the schools that the board passed several months back. So that it allowed us to repurpose some of those funds for a very large purchase.
Okay, and the other is maintenance of plant. We've used 55.51% this year as compared to 7.58% last year.
So that was the roof repair that we got the reimbursement for at Raider Academy from the insurance company. That is where we initially recorded it at. I think in the later month it will even back out because we had to get guidance from the auditor because I've not had this happen in my career, but here. So I think later in the school year in the report it'll even back out, and that money will move down to insurance recovery. So in the month of February of last year, we recorded the roof repair insurance check and that's why it looks like 7%.
Okay.
Truly, it's probably very close to that in the
same.
50s if I take that reimbursement out, because I think it was around $500,000.
Thanks.
Any other questions? We're voting to approve action item number 3, the budget update. Ms. Rose.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That budget update passes 9-0. Now we'll move on to items of discussion. We'll let the principal go first since we've still got a few here. We can start with Parsley or Parsley.
You got 10 minutes and I think it's a record, ain't it?
It could be. We're striving. Maybe we won't sink right here.
We have had a lot go on at Deerfield. We had our spring fling last month, and we had a lot of parent participation, and a lot of families come and join us. We were excited to see them. We had our cookie dough fundraiser. We sold a lot of cookie dough, Otis Spunkmeyer. People love that. We had our Citizenship Quarterly Reward activity, and this quarter, Miss Jennifer Peacock Hodge came out and did a guided, directed painting.
It was
And they
fun.
absolutely love it, so I want to thank you for coming
Oh,
out.
thank you for inviting me. It was
Had
a
a
really
whole
good day.
So she was there for the whole day to do that, and the kids love art. So we also had our Easter lunch with our pre-K, second and third grade students and their families. Had a lot of turnout for that. We also had our Easter parties and the good old egg hunt in elementary schools. We had a math night for our families, led by Miss Janice Talley, our district math coach, and this is her third year doing that, and that was a big success. It's just a nice laid-back time where the families can go and do math activities and explore math with their children. We also, tomorrow is our Deerfield Chick-fil-A night at Chick-fil-A, so any purchases made, if you mention Deerfield Elementary, we get a percentage of the sales. We appreciate you coming out and buying some chicken. Also, Thursday is our academic pep rally to recognize our excellence in academics and citizenship. So that's what we got going on.
What is an
I got
academic
one
pep
that
rally?
you might like. Mr. Shores, is there any way we can look at the pothole as you're going into Deerfield?
Oh, it need to be fixed.
If your lid is not on your sundrop,
I got it.
tell you what will happen.
We've actually already talked about it.
Yeah. And you can't see it in the dark.
All right, at Hickerson, we have a busy week this week. So one of our teachers was chosen as News Channel 2 Educator of the Week. So they are coming out tomorrow to interview Michelle Mulligan and her pre-K class. And then the Chamber of Commerce is doing a ribbon cutting at Hickerson on Wednesday at 4 p.m. if you'd like to join us. And then our spring fling is Friday night from 5:30 to 7:30 for our Hickerson families, but it's also the kickoff to our plant sale. So plants will be sold during that time also. It's not the full plant sale. I don't think our tomato plants are quite ready, but we do have lots of plants that are ready. And then after that, we're going to start gearing up for TCAP. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Crabtree. Mr. Anderson, Mr. Parsley.
I'll be brief. There are always lots of things going on with the size of our building and the number of organizations that we have. And considering that we have ambassadors, we always try to sort of share the wealth. I will share with you that we had just recently, last Thursday, had an interesting day at the high school. It's one of those days that you have quite a bit of build-up for. It was our junior ACT administration day. On that day, we also administered the pre-ACT to our sophomores, and our seniors either job shadowed or they took a post-secondary school visit. So we had lots of job shadowing around town. I was out at Tractor Supply Thursday evening, and one of the employees out there asked me if I knew a certain individual, student of ours, and he was telling me about him being there that day to job shadow. So we had a lot of that going on as well. We'll be excited to see what the junior scores are when they return. The pre-ACT gets you more of a baseline. The ACT scores come out at from a 1 to a 36 theoretically. But the pre-ACT is not scored exactly that way. You get a score, and it's sort of a baseline that would be an equivalent to one of those numbers that I mentioned a moment ago. So we'll see where that turns out. We have lots of sports activities going on with it being spring, and our ambassador will mention some of those. But also I want to mention that the latter part of next week, we have our spring choir, it's not a performance, but several performances, and it's called Songs of Glee. And that will begin next Thursday evening, and that'll be at 6 p.m., and they will be putting on performances for 3 consecutive evenings. Again, 6 p.m. on the 18th through the 20th, and then on Sunday, the 21st, they will have a 2 o'clock performance. So if you get a chance to check out our choir, I'm sure they would appreciate that. I'll leave the rest of our stuff to our ambassador.
Thank you, Mr. Parsley. You don't have anything? All right. Well, thanks for being here for that. All right. Board members, Mr. Ballard, you got anything else you need or would like to look at? Mr. Parsley?
No, sir.
Ms. Jennifer?
I don't think so.
Ms. Frida?
Yes, I would like to clarify something that I feel a need to make sure that everybody understands my stand on the TISA funding. And I want to clarify that tonight. In a recent email from Dr. Lawson to all board members and all school system employees, Dr. Lawson misquoted me. He said, after Mrs. Jones suggested placing the money into fund balance rather than providing it to employees in schools. That is not what I said. This statement was very misleading and inaccurate. I want to clarify publicly what my email to Dr. Lawson and the board said. And this is a quote from the email directly. I said, please refresh the board on the reason we received the TISA outcome funding. This will help in determining the best use for the money. Since employees are already receiving a $750 bonus, it may be prudent to place this money in fund balance in order for a bonus to be provided next fiscal year. I also said we're using up our funds at a fast pace, and I'm concerned we cannot keep this up in the future. I was not saying that employees or schools should not get this money. I was saying that they should, and I was wanting to ensure that there is some type of bonus for the next fiscal year. I was proposing that as an option, not as what we needed to do. We were discussing options, and that was just one option I threw out there. And I want everybody to know that I have and always will be one of the biggest supporters that teachers and employees of public schools can have. And if there's any money out there that's available for teachers, for employees of public schools, I am one that will be for it. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Ms. Rose?
Just to let everybody know, the evaluation committee met on March 19th, and as of that day, we were trying to get all of the evaluations in that went out to the board, to administrators, and to teachers for Dr. Lawson's evaluation. As of that day, which was the 19th, we had 7 responses from board members, 19 responses from administrators, and 97 responses from teachers. I do not have the final numbers on that, but I know that that day was coming right up on what our deadline was for that, because we wanted it done before spring break took place. At that meeting, we talked about contract language We talked about the possibilities of, what the options were. We're providing a performance bonus for a director of schools. I talked with the folks over at TSBA, asking them if they had recommended language for that. They do not. Also, we decided there's a little bit of wordsmithing that needs to take place to the director's evaluation, and I volunteered to take that on, and I will present that at a committee meeting in the very near future. And that's what we did.
Thank you. Mr. Crabtree? All right, Mr. Cordell, anything? Or Mr. Gilly? Okay. Well, I just want to say thanks for your focus today, and we moved on very well, but I do also want to say a couple things. I went last week to the CTE. Mr. Skipper had the TCAT signing, and that was a wonderful event. A lot of kids signed to attend TCAT, and that program just seems to continue to grow and be a positive for our students and also a positive for our community. I really think that's just a lot of exciting things there. And there's a couple of new board members coming to observe us today, so I wanted to welcome y'all. And is anything y'all would like to, a word? You ready? But thank y'all for coming. And that's it. Now committee reports. We've kind of had one, but Dr. Lawson?
And the other committee we have met is the compensation committee, and we've already discussed, like I said, a couple of those items were action items today. The third item in that compensation committee meeting was about athletic supplements, and that will be a point of discussion. The committee decided to defer full conversation on that item until the spring retreat.
Okay. Thank you. The best part. You're here alone today. Welcome.
So soccer's having a really good season. They're 5-0-2, and they had a tournament this weekend in Gatlinburg, and they went 3-0, so that's really good. Softball and baseball are also doing very well in their seasons. This Wednesday, the high school, the teachers and the students and everybody is encouraged to wear blue in order to bring attention to human trafficking across the country, and that was brought about by some of Miss Ackland's criminal justice dual credit students, a project that they're doing. Today we went outside for about 20 minutes to view the eclipse, and we all got the glasses, and it was really cool to see, so yeah.
We got very fortunate. It didn't look like the eclipse was going to be seen here, but that was great. Glad y'all got to experience it. Any questions for our ambassador? Well, thanks for being here. Dr. Lawson, your report and the ESSER update.
Yes, sir. Mr. Shores reminded me I did miss one other committee meeting. There was a Capital Projects Committee meeting where they discussed the 3 engineering firms that put in RFQs for the projects at Hickerson and East Coffee. I believe he has distributed material to the board members related to that topic, and that will be also another discussion at the spring retreat. In fact, those 3 representatives from those 3 firms will be coming to talk to the board and answer questions they may have. Did I leave anything out?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's capital projects. Ms. Garner, refresh my memory, the district-wide field day.
May 8th.
Okay. I didn't think about that until this meeting, so I had to scribble it down, and I had to defer to her. Ms. Garner has been working to create an interaction between the 5th grade only, I believe. 5th grade only at the different elementary schools. So there will be a district-wide field day for 5th graders at the football stadium on May 8th. That is before our next board meeting. And so I want to commend Ms. Garner for her work in that and getting that organized and that kind of thing. But we're hoping if it turns out well, maybe it becomes an annual event. But I would like to say it's the first annual district-wide field day. We will see if that continues. But that's an interest. I believe that could potentially be an interesting experience for our kids and a chance to interact with other groups that they will be running together with the very next school year. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. Anything else that I missed, Ms. Garner?
No.
Okay.
Could you Could you refresh us on Awards Day and Graduation Day? What day are those?
Do you know that off the top of your head, Mr. Parsley?
I have lots of that.
Hang on.
I can dig it up. It'll take me just a minute while he's talking.
That's, yeah, I would have to look in my calendar, but if you've got, he's got his phone as well.
May 24th is graduation. Continue, I'll have it.
Okay,
Okay.
there we go.
You sure on that? May 9th Awards Day. It'll be at 9 a.m.
Thank you.
May 9th.
May 9th. 9th at 9th.
Okay.
Thursday.
Now the next thing I'm going to talk about in the director's report, this is a name that some of you will not recognize. Those of you who have been on the board for several years may recognize this. We had a young lady who graduated in 2022, one of our student ambassadors. She was a student ambassador for the 2021 and the 21-22 school years. Miss Jackson Wagner. And so she was always very energetic and very, very involved and did her job as a student ambassador. My wife noticed on Thunder Radio, our former student ambassador who graduated in 2022 was recognized by the Tennessee Board of Regents as the 2024 Community College Student of the Year for the state of Tennessee. So I believe I just wanted to mention that because some of the board members who have been around before the last couple of years might recognize that name, and you definitely would recognize the face if you saw it. But I just wanted to say congratulations to her. She's representing Manchester well when you win a statewide award. But she was the 2024 Community College Student of the Year, and that was an official Tennessee Board of Regents label. Now, a few weeks ago, we had a cold snap, and I informed the board we were having trouble with heat at the high school. For some reason, there was air in the lines that was not allowing the hot water to flow and get to the different parts of the building. Luckily, it was not an extended cold snap, and I'm hoping after getting up early in the morning and spraying grapes Saturday morning, I'm hoping that we're done with cold snaps, but it's always hard to predict. But we have found that there is a leak in the hot water pipes that feed the CTE wing. The leak is under the pad, creating some challenges with that. And so what has happened is Mr. Shores and Mr. Turner with the maintenance department brought in several outfits. This is a much bigger job than our maintenance department could even hope to deal with. And it is possible to bring those pipes out of the ground, bring them up to the roof of the CTE wing and bring that hot water in that way. And basically, we need to get on the docket as quickly as possible to make sure that is done in the summertime. It is too disruptive to try to do it next school year and that kind of thing. And so I consulted. One of the things I did was I consulted with Dr. Nestor when he was at the signing for TCAT, and so we went and looked at the site and that kind of thing. And I'm explaining this to the board because under policy 2.805 there is a section called emergency purchases, and we are going to go ahead and proceed with work. Mr. Shores consulted with several firms, and we're going to try to go ahead under emergency purchases to make sure we can get this done and on their docket in a timely fashion. And the total price of that in order to redirect those pipes and redistribute them is, the estimate we have right now is $59,720. Unfortunately, we need heat whenever things start cooling down in the fall, but this is the process by which I informed the board. And so that's where we are on that. And then Mr. Shore is going to take a moment to describe where we are on the CTE shop that is being constructed.
The shop is moving on up. Blocks are up. They're about to the top of it. I didn't go out today, but of course the weather, if it continues raining, it's going to mess things up. But they're moving on pretty quick with it.
Yeah, it looks very good. We saw it the other day, and it's really coming along.
And then as far as the ESSER update, there's really nothing to include. It's basically the same thing I've told you for 2 months running. We are continuing to evaluate those. We're continuing to make sure that we expend those funds. This is the last year that ESSER funds can be used for expenses. Well, there's some minor things that can bleed over into the summer, but it's definitely the last calendar year. And so we are trying to make sure that we maximize the use of that. And as was discussed earlier, we have supplanted some regular costs with the district so that we can reassign those monies to something else, and we've also used it for multiple projects. But that's where we are now, and that's the ESSER update.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Well, with that, we have finished our agenda and our discussion time.
Go ahead.
Would like to entertain all in favor for adjournment?
Me. So move.
All,
So move.
everybody else say aye, hopefully.
Bye.
Thank y'all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.